Hello, this is Vector Freeze, and this is a continuation video of ShadowMan. In this segment, we'll be talking about Acclaim's entertainment version of ShadowMan named Michael Leroy. This version of ShadowMan made his first appearance back in 1997. It was considered the ShadowMan Volume 2, created by Garth Ennis and Ashley Wood. Mike Leroy was an English literature major at a college who flunked out due to his gambling addiction, and then he hid that fact from his family back in New Orleans. After he spent all his cash on gambling, he became a taxi driver. During a nightly routine as a taxi driver, Mike's passenger was killed by a drive-by shooting, leaving a briefcase full of money. Mike then took the money to his home to spend it with his family, and used some of that money for his brother's loot operation. Unfortunately, the gang that shot his passenger that night tracked him down and threatened to kill his family. Desperate, Mike sought out a Bokor to give him protection against the gang. A Bokor is a voodoo sorcerer for hire who is said to serve the Loa. The Loa, by the way, is a group of deities which traces back to Caribbean and African history. It is said that the Bokor practice both good and evil magics. Their black magic includes the creation of zombies and talismans and charms that house spirits. Now, back to Michael Leroy. Meanwhile, one day, when Mike and his family were driving out for dinner in their car, they were being followed by another vehicle. This vehicle turned out to be the same thugs who owed the money. They opened fire on the vehicle, killing everyone inside except for Michael. The Bokor's protection worked far too great for Mike, but it was never intended to protect his family, thus leaving him guilt-stricken and alone. A year later, Mike has lost his memory after waking up from a coma. Mike didn't remember anything about his family or even his own name, so he just drank his life away at a local bar. Then, the same Bokor that cast a protection spell on him tracked him down and made Michael a zombie slave. Mike became a hitman, having nothing else to live for. Later on, there was Mama Nettie, a powerful voodoo priestess, arrived with thugs to take on his captor. Then Nettie dragged Michael into a room using the last of her powers to implant the Mask of Shadows, a powerful voodoo artifact, into his chest. Mike then became the ShadowMan, the next in line of African voodoo warriors blessed with supernatural powers to protect the world from the spiritual plane known as the Dead Side. Okay, I'm gonna stop right there about his origin story. Let's jump right in its publication history of this version of ShadowMan. The first issue of Volume 2 was released in March 1997 that ran about for 20 issues, with the final issue being released in October of 1998. Now, since this version of ShadowMan was under Acclaim Entertainment, he also had a video game, an action-adventure title that was somewhat open world. It was released back in November in 1999 on the PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, and even on the PC. The ShadowMan video game was a critical and commercial success, selling over 2 million copies, which, mind you, it was the late 90s, is considered good numbers. Now, as for the sequel that was on the PlayStation 2, it was considered average by most people, and the gameplay didn't live up to par like its predecessor. And of course, in 2004, Acclaim Entertainment went bankrupt, leaving the properties of ShadowMan up in limbo. Let's discuss the comics for a little bit. This version of ShadowMan set a much darker tone to the series and moved away from the sci-fi to focus more on voodoo magic and mystical settings with horror elements and crime. This particular comic book explores themes of revenge and redemption, and so from what I read, this version of ShadowMan shares some similarities to the other guys back in the late 90s, such as Marvel's Blade and Image Spawn. Here's a fun little fact. There was supposed to be a ShadowMan movie back in the late 90s and early 2000s, since they saw the success of Blade and Spawn during those times. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, Acclaim went downhill and ShadowMan's disappeared. But he was revived in 2012. I'll be posting that in my next video of ShadowMan. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. two, killers.